I'd like to introduce you to Dr Rukshana Ali. She's a lead clinical psychologist for a large paediatric department in London. She's a wide range of experiences across long-term medical conditions, and she was very kindly introduced to us by Dr Bob Sarkney. And we're very pleased that you've come all the way from London to speak with us here today. So I will pass you this mic.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk about this very important topic. So, as Sue said, I'm Rukshana, and I'm a clinical psychologist working at the St John's Institute of Dermatology at Guy's and St Thomas's. We do get referrals for mainly EPP, so it might be that some aspects of my presentation is a bit more focused on that. So if it is, I'm sorry. But just as a bit of an overview, we know that people with long-term conditions tend to experience more depression and anxiety than the general population. And because of this, it can impact on quality of life. And this is often because living with a long-term health condition can be really tricky, especially if there's no cure for it. Your symptoms can change from day to day, so one day might be better than the other. Sometimes there's no escape from it, a bit like Anthony was mentioning. You've got to almost pre-plan lots of things that other people might take for granted. And also, you might get some negative attention as a result of your condition. So this is a typical day in my clinic of some of the things that young people might tell me. So they might tell me that they're lonely, or that sometimes they've missed a lot of school and as a result they're falling behind and this causes stress. Or people treat them a bit differently because, you know, sometimes they do have to cover up or wear loads of sunblock. They might feel a bit snappy and angry and sad. And I wonder how many people here can resonate with some of those experiences. And if we unpack it a bit more, these are some of the areas I'm going to focus on in this talk. So I'm going to think a bit more about feeling different and dealing with emotions and how you might manage pain, as well as how you might also deal with other people's stuff, like your families and things. So in terms of feeling different, young people often tell me that sometimes they get frustrated that people might look at them differently, or they might ask them questions like, what's wrong with you? Why are you always sitting in the shade? People might stare and they make comments. And as a result, that makes them feel judged, embarrassed, self-conscious, or even worried. So you're preempting what someone's going to do. And then that impacts on what they do. So this is a nice little toolkit taken from Changing Faces, which is something I recommend in clinic as well. It's explain, reassure, and divert. So if somebody might be looking at you funny, or if they might make a comment, maybe think to yourself, this person's just curious about me. They've maybe never met anyone with porphyria. Or if they say something unkind, you might think, it's their problem, it's not mine. You can always reassure yourself or the other person, so you could always say to yourself, I'm okay, I know I'm all right. Or if they don't quite understand, you can tell them, it's okay, I've had this all my life, I know how to manage it. And then divert. So divert the conversation or whatever the interaction is to something else. So if it's something that's upsetting you, you could think of a nice memory or do some relaxation on yourself. Or if you're talking to another person, it could be maybe redirecting them towards another topic, like what's your favourite football team, or you know, what are you going to do this weekend? And some of the top tips I tell young people in terms of how to manage when they're feeling different is, maybe if someone is staring at you, help the person realise they're staring. Maybe look back, smile. Or, you know, some people actually choose to confront that person. It depends on how confident you feel. But I often recommend if it's not working, just ignore it and move away. And then reassure yourself. Tell yourself, what would your best friend say? Or what would your mum and dad say? Or you could even have a special phrase that sort of brings you back up. It could be, I'm okay. So a young person I see likes to say tally-ho a lot whenever he feels in these situations. And that's his signal that, you know, everything's okay and he just needs to go and keep going about it. So if we move on to think about emotions, because we know that actually our interactions can sometimes affect our emotions. And these are often very common emotions people tell me that they're experiencing. So it's
I'm stressed, I'm sad, I'm bored, or I'm angry. But does anyone know why we have emotions? Yep, it's to communicate. So often it's to communicate how we should respond or something that's not being met inside of us. So for example, if I'm stressed, it's often our body's way of telling us we've got too much going on. Or if you're sad, you've experienced some form of loss. Or if you're angry, you might be feeling threatened or attacked. And if you're bored, it's your body's way of telling you you need to do something to stimulate yourself or get yourself going. And emotions come and go. Nobody's 100% sad all the time. Nobody's 100% happy all the time. It sort of goes up and down. But do you guys know how to bring yourself up when you are feeling down? Do you have any particular strategies or techniques? And that's just something I want you to think about, because I'm going to take you through some more as we go through the presentation. But also, we know that stress can affect pain levels too. There's a really strong link. So when we are starting to feel stressed, our body interprets that as something related to pain, so it makes us get really tense. And as a result, it aggravates our pain even more. So it might be that you've got a bit of swelling, and then your pain levels start to go up. So in terms of managing pain, this is a typical pain cycle. We experience pain, and then we might rest, but actually what happens is our bodies become stiffer. And then movement becomes even more painful, so then we move less. But what happens is we get deconditioned. So then when we finally do move, it's even more painful. So it sort of goes round and round. And I often see this cycle in young people that I see. So one of the things they often tell me is they go through this boom and bust, where they're doing, when their pain levels are low, they do loads and loads of things, but then it aggravates the pain, so then they do nothing. And it goes up and down like this, a bit like the emotions. But actually, over time, you might find that you end up doing less and less because you're worried about activating that pain. So what I recommend is people do what's called pacing, and that's that in-between phase from rest to the high levels of activity. And it's a way of carrying out your activities in a consistent way. So it's a middle ground, so you don't have those high levels of activity and nothing. You sort of have a 50%. And you keep this going every day. And over time, your body does adjust. And you also do it whether you're having a good day or a bad day. So we're going to move tack a bit, and we're going to get you guys actually thinking about when emotions and pain get in the way. So I've got this 5-piece toolkit that I often tell young people to do. And it involves different aspects. So the first one's breathe. So in terms of practicing, I want you all just to get your hand out and just think. And just, as you use your index finger on your other hand, as you go up your thumb, breathe in, and then breathe out. And breathe in, and then out. And in, and then out. And then up, out. And this is a really nice way. You don't necessarily have to do it in this way, but it's just a way of slowing yourself down and almost taking a moment. The other one is with the balloon, is a form of belly breathing. I don't know if any of you guys do yoga or anything, but it's that breathing where you take a deep breath in through your nose and you imagine it's like a balloon, but rather than holding it in your lungs, you push it right down into your tummy. So I don't know if anyone wants to try it, but you take a deep breath in and you try and swallow that breath almost. It's a bit weird and it takes a bit of time, and you hold it and then you let it out slowly. And that's a really good way of almost slowing yourself down in the moment. I know there's some mindfulness sessions on as well, and these techniques are actually very similar to mindfulness. And mindful breathing is another really good way of practicing this sort of breathe and stop, where you're almost focusing on the sensation of the air going into your lungs rather than the pain or the swelling or the other emotions you might be feeling. Then I often recommend that young people explore. So if you are noticing you're getting stressed or your emotions are getting in the way, Start doing the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pick 5 things that you can see, look around the room. 4 things you can touch. 3 things you can hear. 2 things you can smell. And maybe 1 thing you can taste. And again, this is another mindfulness way, but it's a nice way of almost bringing you back to where you are in the present. Because I think the problem is when you're living with a long-term condition, it can feel like that takes up your whole life. But actually, by expanding your attention to other things, will help you to cope a lot better. And then I ask people to expand. So this is a typical cycle that I might see in clinic of where a young person's telling me they can't stand the pain, and that makes them feel anxious, scared, and worried. And so their muscles get tense and their breathing quickens and they get butterflies in their tummy. So as a result, they might rest up or stop doing as much. But actually, that just keeps that cycle going. So what I recommend to young people is take a step back and think coping thoughts, or what would your friends or your mum and dad, what might they say? In terms of your bodily sensations and feelings, do some relaxation exercises or breathing. And with your behaviour, keep on moving despite the pain. Keep trying to keep active. I also suggest that sometimes some people aren't very active, and I appreciate that. So it might be you find other ways of expressing how you're feeling. And that can be through painting, writing, dancing, singing, crafting. Whatever it is you enjoy, do it. Book some time in, actually make yourself do that. Because just doing the opposite of that emotion can have such a huge effect. And connect with people. It's great that you're all here and you're all connecting, but actually reach out to others. Social media is a really good way, but also it can stop you feeling so isolated at times. Have family activities that you do together. Maybe sit at meal times together or do activities with each other. And actually laugh and enjoy yourself. And make time. We're going to finish off on thinking about other people's stuff. And throughout all of this, I've sort of said how hard it is to deal with other people. And even in families, sometimes when one person's really stressed or angry, it's a bit like a hot potato. You sort of pass it on. It doesn't just stay with that one person. Everyone else feels the ripple effect. We can't change what other people do, but we can change how we respond. And it's about looking after yourself as well as your family, but also noticing when you're feeling more tired or anxious or struggling to switch off or putting off other things. It's a sign you need to look after yourself and put your needs first. So sometimes you might hear doctors talk about self-care. Psychologists like to talk about self-maintenance. So maintaining yourself like you will do a car. You wouldn't let a car not have an MOT, so why are you carrying on till you run empty? And self-care is making time for things you enjoy. Finding time for the little pleasures. Saying no, actually, and not feeling guilty about that. And making sure your body's keeping nourished. So keep your tank topped up like you're a car. Looking after yourself, relaxing, resting if you need it, and actually sleeping if you can. So thank you all for listening, and I'll open the floor to any questions you might have.